New setup. Been locked in here for a very long time. Been really getting good at it too, which is kind of scary. It means that there's a lot of growth that comes with being able to voluntarily isolate. And it doesn't mean isolate in the sense of distancing yourself from others, but connecting more to yourself. And this is really the basis of emotional availability, which is what I wanted to get into. A lot of the modern relationship is predicated on people avoiding every single little bit of their humanity that they've neglected for years to then maybe perhaps look to a relationship that can satisfy that. And you've probably heard it before, but I'm going to probably give it a spin that, makes it a little more flavorful, especially when it goes down. You have this guy. He's looking to run away from these monsters. And a lot of the time we often confuse a relationship for a connection with ourselves, when really that's what we really want. And to make this very clear, that a relationship requires sacrifice, and sacrifice is something that most of you don't even know how to do. And because if you have the ability to sacrifice, then you have availability to give. And that really has to do with the modern issue of availability, emotional availability. And I've noticed that the most people who claim to think they have the least of it. And what I really mean by emotional availability is not the question of you being able to just experience your own emotions, but it's really being able to understand and see people. And I recognize that the basis of support, which is the one thing that we do look for in a relationship, is exactly to be seen. Well, to be seen is not just to be acknowledged, it's also to be respected, to be appreciated. Now, you cannot be seen by somebody who has not made a commitment to see themselves. So this guy, he has his monsters and his demons, and you could think of it kind of like as a parking lot interaction. Somebody's going to go ahead and run to another person as they have all of these monsters and demons behind them. And maybe they do, and they see a pretty girl on the boardwalk, and they lock eyes with her, and she lock eyes with him, and the survival mechanism kicks in, and he does everything that he can in order for her to stay. And he showers her with compliments, and she feels beautiful, and she feels desired. And then he just tells her how much he wants to build this life with her. And really what I'm describing is the classic manipulation that most people are too unconscious or unaware to actually identify happens in their relationships. And the whole problem with this is because maybe the way that you live your life is actually not true to how life can and should be lived. And that's not a right or proper reflection of what you can become, and also what that relationship can be and who you are. And so the process of discovering that is one that I know for certain I've struggled with the most in my life. And there's been a few big struggles, and I recognize that one of the biggest reflections I've had in my life as of recently is the ability to have someone in my life requires me to be healthy with my dependency. And an integrated relationship is quite a beautiful one, right? Because it's two things coming together. Now, you ask about parts of yourself, and maybe parts of yourself that you believe can never be loved, and that's a very similar kind of love. And it's an integration of sorts, right? And if you literally look at the word for integration for love, it means that you're embracing the very thing and living with it. You're not leaving it behind. The notion of brokenness, and when people believe they're broken, actually exist when they leave a part of themselves behind. It's like they're living without a part of themselves. And that is true, because you kind of are living without a part of yourself. And I did this other video, actually my manager wasn't there when I did it too. And I just wanted to speak. I wanted to speak about something that got you to get a grasp of the bigger picture, the likeness in each other, and the foundation that we have. And all of that's coming to me now. And I think the new setup is actually partially attributed to that. There's a lot of new. I'm making more of an emphasis on being. And I recognize that that's actually a very difficult thing to do, because what you are being with is perhaps maybe things that you reject about yourself. So you run to this girl, he showers her with love and affection, and she responds. She's not really into you, and you're not really into her. You just love the fact that you can run to this person to run away from the plague that you've been running from, which is all of your unaddressed parts of yourself, and maybe that manifests itself as a zombie apocalypse in your dreams, because that's actually quite common. Running from the unconscious aspects of you as they function unconsciously, and they still haunt you. When I was 21, I recognized that this was actually the foundation of my development and my growth, and it was being able to reflect on everything that I was running from. And it's been 4 years since I broke up from that relationship. Prior to going into it, the last thing I wanted to interact with was loneliness. Every part of myself that I saw that I believed was unlovable came up to the surface. And I was that guy running from my monsters to that girl who was looking for a guy who was running from his monsters, as she was too. The interesting thing about our biases and our stories is that we're so egocentric. It's almost like the only way we can see it is through the way that we perceive that thing. And it doesn't mean that you're not right to an extent, but you're forgetting the rest of the picture that makes you wrong. And that's the interesting thing about a bias or a narrative that you have, is that it will consistently tell you that you're right in this act, but it's really like the manifestation of your self-betrayal. And I can give an example of my client. He was telling me how he was seeing this one girl and things were going really good. And then as things got really good, she went on a trip and then he dipped out. He wasn't interested anymore. And I said, well, that sounds really damn convenient. I said, well, what are you feeling right now? And he's like, I actually feel guilty. I said, guilty for what? And I said, I think I find it interesting that you haven't really done anything, but what are you guilty for? And this is an interesting part of my coaching, is that I'll get people to recognize what their emotions are really saying and then what reality is saying in relationship to it. And you could identify a few things. Your insecurities you don't want to interact with. Your ego, that's a good one. You'll see the story that you tell yourself that actually, almost in a lot of ways, confirms the emotion that you're feeling, but you're asking the wrong questions, so you're going in the wrong places. He tells me that he missed her, but he never really communicated that. There was a few things that they didn't really talk about. So instead, he conveniently just walks away and he told me, I feel like I'm being an asshole. And I said, well, that's interesting. Now your guilt's warranted because you are being an asshole. What quantifies a truthful person versus an asshole is that the truthful person is willing to be an asshole in order to say the truth, because that's actually showing up for the other person. Well, the story wasn't relevant because I wasn't really feeling so connected to it. Like, there was more details to that story that answers a different question. And I wanted to answer the prior question. So the couple running to each other's arms is running away from what they are to each other. Now, this is one of the biggest products of emotional unavailability. I'm going to get into how these manifest in the modern world. And I've recognized that they manifest in a few ways. Typically, people that have discovered an awakening about themselves typically utilize that awakening to avoid everything that they found about themselves that made them look for awakening to begin with. So if awakening and spirituality and religion are all metrics of you to avoid every aspect of your humanity, then pretty much what you're doing is trying to jump to the scapegoat of what these things can offer, to disconnect yourself further from yourself, to then realize that you've become the thing that you were running from through those things that you ran to. Because I've noticed that the classic trope of people that claim to be the most emotionally available are the least. And they're the least because they give themselves so much credit for the awareness that they're doing, but really what they're developing is awareness outside of their system of values. And this is a really big one, is that it's almost vanity. And it's vanity in its highest order. And I've noticed that majority of what I talk about is really the narcissistic culture that's created through dating. And I don't like people being naive to the foundation of what love really requires. The story of the guy and the girl was a story of me and my relationship and what I needed to face in order to really have what I was really looking for. And it's not so cute, because I really want you to remember this, is that the process of creating a loving relationship is one where you need to look at everything that allows it to exist. And I promise you, it's a shot in the dark. Because really, that's actually what your whole life is. Finding your path, finding who you are, maybe even finding that love. And if not a question of finding, maybe discovering, it just depends the process by which you do so. The ball still unrolls for me. And more of the answers come as I'm just willing to accept that I don't know. And even sometimes it comes into where I'm not available. You have 3 relationships, and all 3 of those relationships have the exact same problem. I can guarantee it's you. Even myself, I had to reflect on this too, which is, if I never had that kind of support in my life, then maybe I don't know how to receive it. Because 25 years, you haven't even got a lick of it. Well, then I think that's very reflective of you. We try to fix the lawnmower in the shed when really we want the hot water in the kitchen. And we externalize it to the lawnmower going, why don't you work, when really what you're looking for is in the kitchen, and that's completely separate from that. Now that's hard because, showing up for your life is a very difficult pursuit, because why would you want to do that if you look at the odds of it? You would like to run from it. And I come from a very beautiful relationship, but a beautiful relationship, not your definition of it, not a naive relationship, a beautiful one. And a beautiful one constitutes of being able to look at reality and to the monster that you see in one another that you have to face in yourself. Now, when I say to face this monster in you, I'm not trying to talk about the neglect of it. I'm actually trying to talk about the embrace of it. The embrace of a monster in you is not running away from that part of you as it manifests later in your life. It's the understanding of the likeness in one another, and perhaps maybe what you are is not at all what you are, and that's more of what you are than what this is. And so the two of them coming together changes your perspective, not out of the eyes of one into the other, but looking at the two coming together. Well, then you've already changed the way you see your story. So the initial one of running away from everything that you are into a relationship is the process by which you externalize everything that you ran from onto the person. Now, not only is it not fair, it makes yourself further and further from the things that you're experiencing. And I've working with so many clients recently, and I'm noticing more and more that it becomes progressively more difficult for people to accept perhaps maybe they have nothing to give. And it's not that you don't have something to give, it's that in the current state that you are, you don't. Hence the reason why healing is a very important component. And now, when we hear that we need to heal or that we need to grow, we often hear that we're not enough. Now, that's funny how that works in direct relationship with that. And it's like, this is the process of becoming. Then that means if you're in the process of becoming, you're being. So you're forever being the very process of becoming, and that works in harmony with one another. You're never at odds against each other. And so I recognize this even in my life, is that what it took for me in order to get here, to be able to identify what a loving relationship does look like. When you hear the stories of how I'm here, you would never believe it. Both my mom and dad's side both come from a series of divorces. It's not the prettiest. Every single one of my mother's sisters have a divorce and 3 to their name. And when it comes to even my father's side of things, it's alcoholism, sex. And it's like, okay, anybody who feels that they're alone with the facts that they have hard time to open up to these things, it's like, put your hands up. We all are here. You know, and I even felt alone with everything that I am when perhaps maybe even my parents ran from this part of themselves. And it's like, well, I'll tell you, it ran from them parts of themselves. They put me in an institution that buried everything about reality. But then, of course, you know, when the lies progress so much, you recognize that what you really swore to do was to protect your children. And so maybe you really preserved. And actually, what we really value is the perseverance of love itself. Well, that was interesting. That definitely got me out of school. But it definitely got me asking bigger questions. And the bigger questions of really what it takes to be available for the thing that you seek is actually quite contrary to the way that you live your life. And really what this looks like is to be okay that you do not, and to be okay that you're lost. To be okay that you do not know, and to be okay that you're lost. Now, the process of you being lost means you're probably lost from your own cycles, and you actually gave yourself a shot. Now, being able to change the metric by which you do discover what you're really looking for is going to be the difference between running from or running to. And running to is where dreams are built. Running from is where your nightmare manifests in the place that you thought your dreams would be built. And that happens to a lot of people. They become really naive to the monster they're leaving into a different monster. And I could recall this even when I was 19, going into 20, and then 20 into 21. And then when I met that girl, which when I was 20, I was able to recognize that I ran into a different monster. And it was one that I didn't even perceive as one. So I was, of course, you know, this is why most people have a bad relationship with vulnerability, is really they just have maybe a misunderstanding of that they ran into the jaws of another monster. The beauty that I find in relationships is that they're very self-revealing. And I feel that they're so close to us, and they're quite fulfilling to our meaning in life. We need them in order to feel a sense of fulfillment, to feel like our soul is animated towards something larger. A bigger piece, and that we are a piece of a collective. That's really what a relationship does represent. It makes us feel a part of. That's why we seek it so much. Despite that, we have our holes. It's so interesting, I can't even avoid some of the things that I talk about because I don't even know if it's okay to talk about it. The last thing I'd want you is to be naive to what love requires. Love requires a foundation. And it requires a foundation. It requires you to stare the emptiness back. That is the process of you building it. Now, you might feel like you're miles or distance or planets away from it. If you're feeling that, you're probably in the right place, and that's contrary to what most people feel that they can be or should be reflecting on. And everything that they rejected in themselves was in what they was represented or presented to them in the partner that they were with. And it's only there for your own well-being. It does create an openness, and it creates an openness without you trying to separate yourself from things, and you actually make decisions. Those choices are what make people feel seen, even if it's, hey, this is over. Well, I definitely know I can share this. tragic to say the least that the people that want to be there for you the most are the ones that have the least to give. And it was something that happened with a girl I was talking to recently, and it made me deeply reflect on this because I recognize that a lot of people claim to have emotional availability. Now I work in personal development, it's no secret. I also attract people that are like that. And I hear the problem with people that are like that is that they tend to talk a lot about how they've done the work. And it's like, yeah, you've done the work in every little place where it doesn't matter, because the work where it matters is in relationship to the person that stands in front of you. And this is very true for people. It's like, you want to get good at dating, go on dates. Start learning about people. Start seeing the parts of yourself that show up in them. And do not throw it onto the other person. Start learning to speak for yourself. And that's a product of emotional maturity, is being able to do so. To speak with the very struggle that you know that you have in relationship to the person in front of you shows maturity and ability to show up to the things that you don't quite understand just yet, without you attaching it to the other person. And so I had something very similar to that. And it was at a period where I was reflecting a lot on the loss of perhaps what we do not have in our lives. And again, these things are complicated. And it's not just a simple 1, 2, 3 of how to unfuck yourself. And I sometimes don't even know where to start. I don't know where to start because I know some parts of it, but then the rest of it is like pure mystery. And sometimes seeing the person makes it not so much of a mystery to me, you know? Even talking to a camera gets my head fucking spinny. Because I feel like, you know, like we're looking for these secrets, but like it's not such a secret. Like you can talk to people and you could open up with those people and they'll tell you something if you're open to what they're going to tell you. And if you've addressed maybe the bare minimum of what you had to address about yourself, then maybe you can receive additional truth in your life. And really the basis of this all is being able to take away the incompetent naivete that most people adopt as a mask. And it's not true. There's a likeness that we share, and in that likeness that we share, we become less foreign to one another and less foreign to ourselves. We don't live this shameful existence. We live a liberated one. And it's purely through the basis of communication, but communication in a way that's not separation, and that's most people's words. It's a great distance. It's like, what about the words that bring you closer? Of maybe being able to address certain things about reality and our own humanity, and we can come closer to that. Let that be the basis of our connection. And so what we do is we create splits and divergences from ourselves, and those divergences are preposterous. They're not at all anything but us. It's actually the utmost form of betrayal. And I see it with so many people and so many gifted individuals who have such beautiful hearts. And like, come on, we're in a world in not such inspiring times. We're all fucking drenched in the rain. Like, for God's sake, for once, maybe just reflect a little bit on the real and how important that is. And maybe what it is to communicate is to get rid of what you identify with that you can't communicate with. And it's like, you're a baby, for God's sake. And if you're a baby, then start growing up. It's what you're here to do. What you think that is not lovable is the process of you showing up for those things and incorporating them. Like mankind. There's a universal component to that. And well, you're one aspect of mankind. And an individual is one who's willing to interact with the universal within themselves, not separate themselves from it and shelter themselves from reality, until eventually they shelter themselves from the person that wants to love them. And that hurts. There are things that we can do, and there's suffering that's not necessary. I see a majority of suffering that's not necessary than the meaningful ones. The meaningful ones is a gift to you with a pain of ribbon. A ribbon of pain. Is it sad? Of course it's sad. And what I recognize as sad is the process by which we acquire this is not outward. I mean, I could only imagine how much difficulty it is to even interact with these things. Like, what are you interacting with? You're inviting pain, you're inviting insecurities. You're changing the way that you see your life. You're changing the way that you see your partners. You're not just adopting to a philosophy, you're adopting to a way of being. I mean, that's healing for others. And what I've recognized is that people who can address the past, the foundation, and everything that came prior can accept the dead. And this is something interesting, and it's like, they don't have a shot anymore. It's over for them. But it shines a light on what you can do. There has to be a deeper level of faith, a deeper calling, something that's pulling you along your life to allow you to recognize that you're not alone, even when you're lost. I've seen the destructivity of people who aren't integrated, that run from parts of themselves into others. As they don't become a solution that they want to see in the world, they further the problem. And something to wrap this up. Because sure, it's coming from a lot of places, and I think really I'm just trying to speak from deeper parts of myself, and it's less more of just my own level of cognitive understanding, but I believe a presentation of being, and a presentation of being to help you bridge the gaps of where you believe that you're not. What is it really to be emotionally available? And it's not just for other people, but it's really how you live your life. And I recognize that the dishonest way of life only creates a dishonest way of being, and that shows up in your dishonest behaviors. And what progressively begins to happen is a dishonest presentation. And then you start thinking that this is really who you are. And I've noticed that when working with people, that when they open up, they recognize that they can't be there for others. And that's a difficult thing to accept. I notice that what you can give others, especially if you even want to start being more available, because don't act like you are. Start recognizing how you can see others for the struggles that they do have, and how maybe perhaps you can't be there for them. It would allow you to at least start recognizing where you're at with yourself, opposed to consistently chasing something that's not there in reality, further distancing you from your connection to it, and to your own life. To live a loving life is to show up for the responsibility of your life for the rest of your life, and that's going to change the way that you're going to interact with it. Because when you make a commitment, and a commitment towards becoming the best version of yourself, you also make a commitment to opening up to everything that has hurt you. That's exactly the process by which you weave in everything that has shaped you to be who you are, with every single little gift that you're given on this planet. You know, it's interesting because I don't feel that I need to. I feel like I communicated the dimensions of what creates availability. Like, that's really the whole point of this, is so that you can at least be able to recognize that you're probably not. And a world where you're probably not is a world you can become. And then the embodiment of becoming is being. And I'm recognizing that myself, because I do like to tie it into my own personal journey, into something I give. I've been working on being. Being is tough as fuck, I'll be honest with you. Well, because it's accepting becoming. But it's also being. So it's kind of rich. It's like you're bringing a little bit of what you wanted in your life by the acceptance of becoming. And I've been really inspired by that. And I've noticed that it's really not too bad when you recognize that you're on your journey. And your journey doesn't need to require the usage of others, and it requires the ability to communicate where you're at. And that communication of where you're at and the ability to do so is the beginning of emotional availability. You're not actually discrediting or trying to add more to what it is. You're seeing it as it is. And that's a difficult conversation to have, because maybe you can't really be there for others when you tell them anything that you need from me. Maybe that's true, you can't. Maybe what you can do is recognize what they're going through, and perhaps maybe how you don't have something to give in that regard. It gives you awareness of your life. They do truly say the truth sets you free, but being able to embody that in your life would definitely change the way that you live it and how you see yourself.